Welcome to the Business Trendsetter Podcast, where we help you to decode your customers' wants and needs through innovation. My name is Manny Turan.
And I'm Adam Hartung.
And we are Spark Partners. To learn more about how we can help your business grow and help you understand your customers in a deeper way, go to our website at sparkpartners.com. And on today's podcast, our discussion centers around a broader definition to the word digital nomad. On the line, we have Max Tornow, who's going to be joining us from Kiev. And we'll discuss a little bit about his background and help us to understand why every business owner really needs to put more attention to the ever-growing social media platforms. We think that these things are saturated already, but as we've discussed, Adam, we haven't even scratched the surface, right?
That's for sure. That's for sure.
All right, I'll be bringing on Max.
There we are.
Hey there, Max. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How about you two guys?
Excellent. I want you to meet Adam Hartung.
Hello.
Nice to meet you, Adam. It's my pleasure.
So what I'd like to do here is, I want to get a little bit about your background, Max. And so I think it's important for Adam and the listeners to kind of know who you are, what drives you. And then we have a couple questions that will help direct the audience towards a deeper understanding of that term we discussed earlier of a digital nomad, what that means, and really better understand where the trends of social media are going. Go ahead, Max.
Sounds good. Yeah, my name is Max Tornow. I've built my very first online coaching, well, back then actually offline coaching business, must have been around 2012, 2013. Toured around the world for 4 years. That was dating advice and personal development advice. Started transitioning into online around 2016. That was also when I made my first million at the age of 26. I wanted to make it by 30, so I was kind of 4 years faster, which was fantastic. Started launching 2 more online video courses that I think also cracked 7 figures. Then I started getting more and more into the online coaching sphere. In 2018, I slowly started transitioning into online consulting for businesses, just simply because most people started asking me business questions on, how did you build it? How did you build your brand? And so on and so forth, within the online consulting for businesses. Now, since 2018, we're currently making multiple 7 figures a year, about to scale to the 8-figure mark, which is obviously very fantastic. Have 25 full-time employees nowadays, most of them in our 2 offices here in Kiev, some of them working remotely, and life's been peachy since then.
Excellent. Adam, maybe it'd be important for Max to know a little bit about your background.
Yeah, well, before we do that, Max, let everyone know how they could reach you. What's the contact way to get to you?
Well, you can hit me up on my Instagram. Max_Tornow is always something where I reply personally. That's a W at the end, so it's Tornow, basically. You can also visit my website, 7figurebusiness.com, where we have a little bit more information. And I think Instagram and the website is probably the best ways.
Okay, good. Well, we're here because we like to talk to people about trends and how if they look at trends and understand where trends are headed, then they're more likely to make money. It's easier to make money being on a trend than it is to go out there and fight tooth and nail on some old business that perhaps is shrinking. And so there's no doubt that social media is one of the biggest trends out there, and I think that it combines with the growth of the gig economy. In the United States, almost half of all the people are now doing some kind of a gig work job. So I'd like to hear your points of view when it comes to understanding how the gig economy and kind of meets up with social media and what the opportunities are like and how you see the trends headed.
I mean, we see that a lot with our beginner clients. We help our beginner clients, build their very first online businesses as coaches or consultants or service providers. And that correlates exactly with that gig economy because back in the days, 20, 30 years ago, it would have been completely normal to get a job and then work at that job for 20, 30, 40 years, stay there. But now, of course, companies are kind of, they feel a little less secure in the market nowadays, especially now with the ensuing crisis. So there's just more and more companies just hiring for short term. So this whole big advantage that quote unquote safe jobs have had so far, which is get a safe and steady job, is not given there. And people are waking up more and more to the idea of that, hey, hold on a second, if jobs are not that safe, might as well build my own business because it's almost the same already anyways. Now with 2020 on top of that, we see the trend of everything going online. I mean, Zoom, we're using Riverside, Skype, and so on and so forth. I mean, lots of people didn't even know what the hell that was 2 years ago. Now almost everybody is using it. So it's that the lines are much more blurry now between having a job, a remote job, and having your own business. And now on top of that comes the one thing that you just said correctly, Adam, which kind of connects everybody, and that is social media. What used to be a business card back in the days is now basically your Instagram account or your Facebook account and so on and so forth. And you see that where there's, a lot of 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, they got that social media game all figured out because they grew up with it over the last couple of years, almost over the last decade. So they know how to present themselves from their best side with their profile pictures, their banners, their types of posts. They've almost kind of done it, natively from a gut feeling. And now there's this whole generation of people that are kind of like in between, the 35, 45-year-olds who kind of use social media. They kind of have a Facebook account, but they're completely behind on the understanding of these massive social networks. And that is how I've seen this time and time again, where coaches and consultants that have been doing this for 10 years, mostly offline, they come to us and they're like, hey, I'm being outperformed by some 20-year-old simply because they got that social media game much better handled. And if you don't know how to leverage that, you're automatically on the losing side.
We have a lot of people in the United States that are even way older than you're talking about. Our current president, I think, is in his 70s. Our previous president was in his 70s. What are just a couple of insights to the people that are out of touch? How would you take somebody that's not prolific, doesn't really understand these platforms? Just what a couple of insights you would give them right off the beginning?
I always put it like this. Imagine a social media platform like a cocktail party, right? There's a lot of people mingling there. A lot of people that have different interests. There's, certain like little bubbles. There's a couple of people in that corner. There's a couple of people over at the bar. And it's very similar. People are friendly. People are absolutely willing to get to know each other. But at the same time, first impressions do matter. Just like at a cocktail party. If you're showing up and you're wearing wacky clothes and you're sounding weird and you speak weirdly, people will judge you accordingly. But if you have a good social media presence, people will instantly, so again, like you can leverage that. People will instantly see you as somebody that has expertise, somebody that can actually help you. And this is especially for businesses, very, very important. So it's literally like a very large global cocktail party.
Yeah, I'm remembering there's a young TikTok star, Charlie D'Amelio, who is 17 years old, and over the past 4 years, started with nothing, and now she's got millions of subscribers, and she's raking in 8 figures at 17 years old. Just using that platform and being able to leverage it. Now, who knows how the longevity of that, if she's going to be able to continue that, but it is what it is right now. And a lot of business owners, I think, they don't really fully understand why they should be online. Hey, I've got a coffee shop, or I've got, something that, why would I be online? Why does it matter to those business owners? A local brewery, why should they be online, Max?
Yeah, simply because, again, competitors are. And I understand that, a lot of businesses, especially small businesses, they rely a lot on referrals, and that's absolutely fantastic. And they have kind of like a little bit of a network themselves, and they're doing fine right now. But at the same time, our attention span is getting shorter and shorter too. So maybe you have somebody that is just about to become referred to you, but from the moment they hear about you for the first time, all the way to the moment they hear about you, again, for a bar or brewery for the second time, meanwhile, they see ads from your competitor. They come across the social media content from your competitor. And because it's much more fresher in our mind, and because we see it repeatedly, we're just biased in that regard. It's repetition bias. So it's just easier for the consumer to flock towards the person that has a social media presence. I mean, look at our own consumer behavior too. If and I'm traveling a lot, I'm running my business from my cell phone basically. And whenever I go to a new city and I want to find a restaurant, I don't ask people anymore, hey, do you know a good restaurant? I go on Google, I type in, I don't know, Thai restaurant. And what I do is I look at their sites. I look at their Google. I try to find them on Instagram. And it's usually, to be fully honest, the restaurant that has an Instagram or a website or a Facebook where I can look up the menu, where I can see a picture of the food that I usually end up going to. And this is just the behavior of most people nowadays. It evokes trust. It evokes more appeal. It's easier for me to find out more. And therefore, people or businesses that are online will just always win.
So it sounds like you see a future in which social media is here to stay, and people working for themselves are here to stay. That's going to become the norm, not the new thing.
Correct. I 100% agree with that. I mean, we've seen it now with 2022. You know, in the beginning, we were all clumsy because the home office was doing meetings over Zoom. And now everybody is realizing, hey, this is much more convenient. I don't have to commute 2 hours to my job anymore. I can just jump on a Zoom. It's more convenient. It's faster. Whether or not it's better from a social standpoint, I don't know. I'm not here to judge, but from a business standpoint, it's definitely here to stay.
Just a couple of factoids I think are kind of fun to throw in here. Mark Zuckerberg has told the people at Facebook that he's going to work from home 1 to 2 days a week because when he started working from home, his productivity became so much better. And then Satya Nadella at Microsoft has put out an announcement yesterday that the rewrites of the products they have and moving forward towards Windows 11 had been greatly affected because he had to work from home and see how people actually use the products they sell. So I think I found both of those pretty telling comments from CEOs of some very large organizations that it definitely indicates that this is the new normal. This is the way things are going to be.
Yeah, so I have another company that I work with, Max. It's a medical device startup. And, we talk about, there's a term that I really like in that space, but I really wish we could apply it to the rest of the world. And that is standard of care. When something becomes the standard of care, it means that's what happens. That's the way things are treated going forward. And so Zoom meetings, Riverside, whatever you want to call it, whatever platform, is fast becoming the standard of care. I mean, it's not quite there yet because people still have some affinity towards the office. And there's certainly things you can't do remotely. You can't, do a blood work remotely necessarily. You can't take blood remotely. Maybe in the future you can. I don't know. But those are all opportunities for entrepreneurs and business owners to understand where these trends are going so they can align with them and be there when they are ready to go.
So 8 out of 10 CEOs of Fortune 500 companies have said that they wanted to get all of their employees back in the office. And Goldman Sachs and the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, they've come out and said by a certain specific date, be in July or August or September, they expect everybody to be coming into the office again. So Max, how do you react to that? And what would you say to somebody who's 35 years old, 37 years old, and they work at one of those companies, and they're not seeing that that's the right thing to do. They're not agreeing with the CEO who's saying we got to get everybody back in the office. Do you have any advice for them?
Wait and see, because especially when it comes to Fortune 500 companies, lots of them are reliant on shareholders. So what they basically want to communicate is they want to communicate as much stability as possible, and they say, hey, yeah, everything will be getting back to normal. We will get people back to the office. That's what I would say if I had a ton of shareholders breathing down my neck to ensure that I communicate safety and security and stability of my company. But at the same time, I think time will tell because these business owners ain't stupid. Otherwise, they wouldn't be Fortune 500 owners. They will look at the productivity. They know exactly what their numbers are looking like during COVID, during the time where everybody was in home office, and they will look at the numbers once people come back, and they will literally just make the most economic decision. So if I were, my advice for people working in such companies is, yeah, time will tell, and roll with the punches. Whether that is home office, make sure you're doing the best job possible in the home office. Whether that is working at the office, make sure you're doing the best job there.
The New York Times ran an article last week. It was headlined "I Quit," and they brought up the fact that there are more people quitting their jobs now than have ever happened before. And they said, well, part of this is probably because they didn't quit during the pandemic. But now when they're being forced to come back to work or forced to go back to a job and at the same pay, a lot of people are saying, no, I had a year and my life changed. I look at things differently now. And they're saying, no, I quit. I see this in a way as an opportunity for an employer. And this is going to sound backwards, but it strikes me that if you are running a restaurant or a retail store or some business and you need these people and you've been paying them a small amount of money, not a living wage, but certainly not enough money that they could have an enjoyable life. And they're saying, you know what, I'm not going to go back to that. It's not worth it. We hit the pause button and now I'm not going to do that job at that pay. It would seem like the person who has the foresight to raise the pay and pay more and then redo their business model would take a lead. They'd say, well, I can't afford to sell hamburgers for $1.50 if I pay somebody $15. Well, I'd say, well, pay them $15 or $17 or $20 and raise the price of your hamburger to $2. Because if the other people down the street can't staff their business, you're still going to come out ahead. Anyway, that's my opinion, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong on that one, but I'd be curious, what do you think, Max? Do I sound like I have my head on backwards, or what do you think?
Well, in all honesty, I do agree to a certain degree. What you have to do as an employer, you have to basically make sure that people do come to you, that you can continue with your business. That starts with raising the pay, but it doesn't end there. I would almost go as far as to say it's not only the pay that keeps the higher pay that keeps people coming back. It's also just the work environment in general. Do people like a team dynamic? Are people being treated with respect? Do people have the opportunity to improve their situation, to get better, to rise up the ranks within a company? I noticed that too here with my employees. At least the way we're hiring, we hire very little people that are just out there to make a quick buck. Well, for the sales guys, maybe we hire people that are pretty much driven by money, but everybody else is just being hired because their personality type is a personality type. They want to work with somebody in our field. They want to grow. They want to have an epic team around them, and so on and so forth. And I think, raising the pay is one thing, but shouldn't be the only thing that employers should offer their employees.
Remember when we were kids, our parents and grandparents and uncles and aunts and everybody told us to mind our manners, shake somebody's hand, look at people in the eyes, that kind of stuff. And, and then it kind of evolved from that to then at the workplace, show up a little bit earlier, hopefully earlier than your boss, leave late, hopefully later than your boss, things of that nature. I think this is the next evolution of that same track, right? The same trend, or if you will, of now you've got to have some level of familiarity with these platforms. You've got to have the ability to work remotely as a matter of not as an exception, but as a matter of course. I think that people that are fighting that are going to be left behind. And again, not everything can be remote. I mean, a police officer is working remotely already all the time, right? And to some degree. So these are things that are, that the majority of the people that are employed need to think about. And of course, as Adam mentioned earlier, business owners need to really begin to adapt to these changing times.
To Max's point, I was eating lunch at a cafe recently, and there was another cafe across the street, and it was not open. And so I chatted up the server a little bit and said something about them being open, and the one across the street apparently, it wasn't going to make it. And the server looked at me and he said, the guy that ran the place across the street was a jerk. Nobody liked working for him. And it struck me. It's like, for the longest time, he got away with being a jerk. And now he can't. He can't get away with it. His work environment was not a pleasant one. And so when people had an opportunity to choose to make a change, they did. And so I think a lot of us don't spend enough time thinking about that. Like, what kind of an environment are we creating? And that work culture doesn't have to be in the restaurant or in the office. There's a culture when you're online. It's how you talk to each other. As Amy said, do you honor people's requests to be on time for a call? Do you honor the time limit of the call? Do you stick to the agenda of the call? We got pretty sloppy about a lot of that stuff in the old days. Hey, let's we're going to have a meeting. Three of us need to get together. Well, let's go ahead and invite 7 people to the meeting just because we can. People come to the meeting. Yeah. We're sitting there doing email at the meeting, and they're doing texting while they're in the meeting. They're not paying attention to what's necessarily going on. They wander off the reservation, adding agenda items to the meeting. It doesn't end on time. It goes 30 minutes longer. This was a lot of where we were, a year and a half ago. It was, as Manny said, not the most polite way to work. And I think that we're using the culture now. We're creating some different cultures. And that's not just because we're online, but I think that this new way of working is really going to make a difference and mean that if the people that were sloppy about a lot of that stuff in the past, they're going to have to shape up, I think.
This is actually an excellent segue. Adam, you and I must be on some cosmic wavelength, because I wanted to ask Max a very specific question in light of, look, Max, you are in Kiev, you are in Austria. I mean, you're everywhere. I've looked at your social media page and I've followed you for a little bit of time, and you're popping around everywhere. Help us give a perspective of the culture aspect of this work, this new work ability, right? I mean, you're in a different time zone, like crazy different time zone. You're in a different continent, and here we are having this discussion. And so, how do you see these other smaller countries, the Thailands of the world and other ones, and whatever? How do you see them in this new battlefield of the economy?
Well, I've seen it literally in the last 5 years. Everything's being homogenized. That means prices are going to be slowly but steadily going to get together, because borders are basically being teared down, first digitally and then also with the traveling. Of course, COVID has kind of dampened that a little bit, but ultimately, I'm in Kiev right now, for example, and this used to be price-wise completely and utterly different from the West. Now it's almost the same, simply because, guys like me can come here. They don't even need to speak the language. They create their own bubbles here. Lots of companies are coming to places like Kiev, but also to places like Warsaw or Krakow, for example, or people, to Sofia, whatnot, because they say, hey, the people here are massively overeducated and underpaid. So I come here with my international company. We're getting paid in dollars or euros. Therefore, I can afford much higher salaries. It's kind of along the lines of what Adam told us. Adam was giving the local example, but this is basically a global example. So now you can come in, have much more competitive salaries for your employees. People speak English anyways, because people learn it. People see it on social media all the time. And therefore, of course, you see it in the real estate market. The real estate market is a little bit behind, a decade or 1.5 behind. But now even, prices of houses and apartments are slowly going up, because there is no country borders anymore. It's just easier and easier for people to travel, establish their businesses, work from their laptop, work from their phone or whatnot. And therefore, we see everything just kind of going together, and it's that has massive advantages. It also has disadvantages. What everybody who's listening to us or watching this right now has to think about is like, what side do I want to be on? Do I want to be on the losing side, or do I want to be on the winning side? I've certainly been working on being on the winning side now since roughly 2012, 2013, and it's paid off. So, stop snoozing, stop sleeping, wake up, see the opportunity that's out in front of you. Just because it's always been that way doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. You have to be quick on your feet, and that's okay too. It might be scary at first, but ultimately the payoff is there.
So the old white men that run the United States, and I'm talking about the Senate and the Congress and the presidency, they seem to have a bugaboo about social media, and we're hearing every week discussions about we're going to break up big tech. We're going to take Facebook into pieces. We're going to take Amazon into pieces. I don't think they understand what they're trying to say, and personally, I don't think that there's much of a chance that this will happen. What do you think, Max?
I don't think it's going to happen at all. What they'll do is that they'll find a way to work with big tech, or because they can't do it against it. What are they going to do? And also, you've kind of mentioned the Senate, and did this happen like a year, must be 2-3 years ago, where the Senate was kind of having this hearing with Facebook about whether or not they're breaking any laws with the privacy and so on and so forth. These gentlemen had absolutely zero idea of anything. I mean, they were asking Zuckerberg, like, how exactly are you getting the data? They were so behind. They're not even possessing the competence to make a valid choice here. They're simply lacking the understanding of it. So it's going to be really interesting. On the other hand, I also understand that these big tech companies, they're privately owned companies. Therefore, they can censor. They have the right to censor. It's a private company. But the problem is, on the one hand, they have the right to censor people if they don't like them. They don't even need to give any reason for that. But on the other hand, these big social media platforms, Facebook, but also things like Google social media services, they're almost becoming a commodity simply because people are using them. For example, I use Gmail, right? We communicated over Gmail, over the Gmail calendar to make sure we can all make it to this meeting. We talked over Facebook. So we kind of need them, but at the same time, there's also danger in it because they can censor. But at the same time, I think it makes things a lot easier. I'm not a politician. In fact, I don't want to be one because this sounds like such a mammoth task. To do it right, it's going to be hella interesting to see what's going to come out.
So, Max, did you have a chance to look at Spark Partners, and do you have any critiques of us? Pile it on. Tell us what we're doing wrong if you've got a mind to.
I've only seen it a little bit in the periphery, and what I've seen so far looked and sounded really, really interesting. I mean, I would have to have a little bit of a closer look in order to really give critique, but so far it seems like you guys know what you're doing, and that's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, you're being very kind.
Hey, just being honest.
Here's the deal.
I'm known to be quite direct if I need it, but yeah.
We're really we drink our own Kool-Aid. Adam and I, you've heard the term, of course.
It's good.
And we are following trends as well, right? We're the whole idea of people learning remotely. We've got a course called Think Innovation. It's a business growth course that is leveraging a lot of Adam's background, having worked with Clayton Christensen, and really understanding why most companies fail while very few succeed, especially over the long term. The whole long-term piece, a little asterisk there, makes a big difference because most people don't think that way. They think in a very short-sighted way. And so, it's really exciting to have you on the podcast because you're giving us a perspective from literally across the pond, from across the street, right? And so for us, take a look at what we have going on. We'd appreciate your thoughts on it. But tell us what other business owners should be doing on a day-to-day basis to try to grow their business from your perspective.
Invest in yourself. Don't just brush it off and say, anything online is just a fad and so on and so forth. It's just a bubble, la-di-da. I hear that all the time. Now, I do agree it's a bubble. There's so many online coaches, experts out there, courses, and so on and so forth. I do agree it's a bubble to a degree, just like the .com was a bubble. But what happened after the bubble burst? Well, the top 20, 30% absolutely took off, and now they're dominating. And that's exactly what's going to happen with this field as well. Right now, it's really, really easy to get your foot in the door. There's basically zero entry barrier. Anybody can create a social media account. Everybody can use the online opportunities, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and so on and so forth, TikTok, to get ahead. At some point, bubble's going to burst. If you are well positioned at that point, you're going to have a much easier time. If you're half-assing it at that point, you're not going to get a lot out of it. So that's why I say, what you guys are doing is great. And you guys seem to be very, very committed. Since I've been stumbling across you, I've seen it, I've witnessed it, and that's fantastic. And everybody that's staying behind, it's only going to get worse for them. You're only going to miss out more. And one last thing that I want to mention here, that's perfectionism. Because a lot of people say, well, there's so-and-so competitor out there, and they're already having hundreds of thousands of followers, and everything they post looks so great, and so on and so forth. Yeah, probably is, but nobody needs to be perfect. I'm not perfect. None of my businesses has been perfect. I've made mistakes in my business. I've released pictures with a typo in it, and that's totally fine. People don't see perfectionism in times like these anymore. People want to buy authenticity. They love authenticity much more than someone that seems to be the best choice. And therefore, if you're scared of it, if you think you need to be perfect in order to put yourself out there and become visible online, don't worry about it. Just go do the first steps, roll with the punches.
That's really good advice, Max. We actually have and I'll mention to the viewers and the listeners that we have an event coming this Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific time. It's kind of a Q&A with Adam and I. It's the ability to really ask some very deep questions about your business, how to grow your business. So we're sponsoring that here on in a couple days. It'll be probably too late for you to be. It might be like 3 a.m. for you, Max. But certainly you're welcome to join. It'd be exciting to have you there. And something else that I'll mention here before we begin to sign off is that collaboration, in my opinion, is even more valuable now than it has been in a long time. And we me being Gen X, like we were basically brought up to be like lonesome warriors, right? Go out there on your own, do it on your own. And so as a full Gen X guy, I got to really think about collaboration and make it, part of my my war chest. And certainly, collaboration in this sense. I mean, you're doing one thing in your way, and Adam and I are doing something in our way. To the extent we can collaborate, I think we can actually 1 + 1 can equal 3 or even 4. So, do you see that as well in what you do?
Absolutely, and that's also just the power of everything being online and social media. It's like someone has a social media following of X, the other person has a social media following of Y. Collaborate, whatever is basically the crossover between these two social media followings. It's going to be great. And hey, I love what you said at the blah blah blah. I never knew about you. Now I'm following you. Now I'm becoming a diehard fan. I'm becoming a client, and so on and so forth. Absolutely loved what you said there. Like I grew up, being brought up as a lone warrior. I've hustled my whole life to get to where I am right now. And at some point I started collaborating and things just became so easy. And it's a really, really wonderful thing. It's one of the biggest advantages and one of the most beautiful things that you can kind of witness with the whole social media thing. Love it or hate it, but it does bring people together. What
I'd like you to do, Max, remind everybody again how they can find you. And then I'd like Adam to give his final thoughts, and then we'll sign off for today.
Sounds good. You can find me on Instagram, Max_Tornow with a W at the end, or my website, 7figurebusiness.com. MaxTornow.com works just as fine. I reply to my own DMs. I don't have VAs or assistants doing that. And would love to get in touch.
I think that what we try to do on these podcasts is help people have their eyes open to what's really happening in the world. We often get blinders that are created by what we did in the past, and it builds into biases, and we do more of the same because it's easy to do more of the same rather than opening our eyes to what the future is going to be. And I think Max is a great example of what we want people to understand. You can get out there and make it happen. It's not just Manny and I. It's not the outliers. This is the real world, and it's the new normal. And people can get out there and they can become their own Max Tornow, and they need to get off their butts and do it.
Very well said. Very well said, Adam. I think there's only one Max Tornow, but thank you for being on our show, Max, the Business Trendsetter Podcast. For our listeners, make sure to go to our website, sparkpartners.com. And of course, remember the event happening in a couple days here. Go to community.sparkpartners.com/events, and you can sign up and be part of that Q&A. So with that, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.